Jason leaned back against the cool stone wall of the spaceship's inner chamber, his arms crossed as he watched the alien women move gracefully around him. These were no ordinary women, but members of an ancient warrior race known as the Avarics. Their skin shimmered in shades of blue and silver, with intricate designs painted across their bodies. It was almost as if the universe had created them for battle and elegance in equal measure. Jason chuckled to himself, thinking of how he'd first been introduced to them. He had been sent to a distant planet to negotiate trade agreements with the Avarics Empire, a powerful alien race known for their tactical brilliance in combat. Instead, he found himself surrounded by warriors whose physical strength and beauty were like nothing he'd ever seen. "You think you're the first to entertain the Avarics?" one of the women, Kylara, had asked, her voice smooth yet commanding. She was the leader of their group and stood tall, a few inches above Jason's 6 feet. Her eyes sparkled with an intensity that made him hesitate, but he laughed it off, brushing it aside as a harmless comment. The Avarics had shown him a great deal of respect, which he found surprising. They didn't usually extend such courtesy to outsiders, especially humans. Jason was no fool. He knew it was because of his unique position as a skilled negotiator. However, he wasn't prepared for what would come next. That night, after a successful meeting and a few too many celebratory drinks, Jason found himself in a situation that quickly turned awkward. Kylara and 2 other women, Erix and Lyra, had insisted on carrying him around the massive ship as part of their custom. He had assumed it was just another alien ritual, a simple harmless gesture. Jason smiled, thinking it would be amusing. How often did a man get carried around by alien women after all? He couldn't resist the urge to joke, making light of the situation, claiming it was a moment of pure honor. What he hadn't realized was that this tradition carried a much deeper meaning. The trio's eyes darkened as they moved closer, and Jason noticed their grip on his arms tightening. It felt strangely firm, as if they were using more strength than he expected. They carried him effortlessly, their steps synchronized, echoing through the massive hallways of the spaceship. "I hope you find this amusing," Kylara said with a wry smile, her voice low and serious. Jason chuckled nervously, trying to ease his growing discomfort. The last thing he expected was for them to take him so literally. As they moved through the dark corridors, the atmosphere changed. The walls seemed to close in on him, and Jason's heart began to pound. There was something unsettling about the way the Avarics moved, a sense of purpose he couldn't shake off. They weren't just performing a playful gesture, they were leading him somewhere. Jason's laugh died in his throat when he saw the massive steel doors ahead. They were heading towards the training grounds, where the Avarics held their most dangerous trials. Something told him that this wasn't just a game anymore. Kylara's voice broke through his thoughts. "This is where the game ends, human. The Avarics do not play lightly." Jason blinked in surprise, trying to make sense of her words. Before he could react, the doors opened, and the women set him down on his feet, forcing him to stand in front of a large arena. He wasn't just a guest anymore. He had unwittingly entered the heart of their warrior culture, a place where only the strongest survived. And now he was going to have to prove himself. As the doors slammed shut behind him, Jason's mind raced. He wasn't prepared for this kind of trial. He had thought it was all a joke, a strange custom. But now, he stood at the edge of a battle arena, surrounded by the fiercest warriors in the galaxy. It was clear that this would not be the fun adventure he'd envisioned. Jason took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. This wasn't just about diplomacy anymore, it was about survival. The Avarics weren't interested in negotiating, they wanted to test his strength, his will, and his very survival. The arena's lights flickered on, casting harsh shadows on the ground. Jason swallowed hard as he realized he wasn't going to walk out of here the same way he came in. This was a war, a test of strength, and he had just become a part of it. Jason stood motionless as the massive doors slammed shut behind him. the sound echoing in the vast metallic space. He wasn't sure whether he was supposed to fight or if this was just a test of his endurance, but the atmosphere in the arena felt suffocating. The lights above him burned brighter, casting shadows on the cold stone floor. Around him, the Avarics. Warriors circled, their piercing eyes fixed on him as they waited for him to make his move. Kilara, standing at the edge of the arena, locked her gaze with him. There was no smile now, just an unreadable expression. Her body language was stern, and the other women, Eryx and Lyra, stood next to her. Observing intently, Jason felt the weight of their eyes on him, and a wave of unease washed over him. He had to remind himself that this was no ordinary situation. This wasn't some playful custom. It was a challenge, and if he failed, there was no telling what would happen next. The Avarics didn't show mercy to those they deemed unworthy. Fight or be tested. Kilara's voice cut through the tense silence. She spoke calmly, but there was a dangerous edge to her words. Jason knew that this wasn't a game. The Avarics took their trial seriously, and there was no turning back now. He could see that the arena wasn't just an ordinary training ground. It was designed for intense battles. The ground was covered in dust, and there were faint scorch marks on the walls, remnants of countless fights. The air was thick with anticipation as the Avarics warriors prepared for something more than a mere sparring match. Jason's heart raced as he glanced at the weapons lined along the walls. He had no training, no idea what he was about to face. He had spent his life negotiating, not fighting. But here, in this arena, those skills were useless. His survival depended on his ability to adapt. Kilara stepped forward, raising her hand to signal the start of the challenge. In the blink of an eye, Jason was surrounded by 3 Avarics warriors, each wielding weapons he couldn't even name. The battle was about to begin. Jason's instincts kicked in. He ducked under the first strike, narrowly avoiding the sharp edge of the Avarics warrior's sword. The speed of their movements was unbelievable, and he found himself outmatched at every turn. He had no weapon, no defense, just his wits and the hope that his quick reflexes would keep him alive. The Avarics warriors moved with incredible precision, their attacks coming faster than Jason could react. He stumbled backward, trying to dodge, but one of them managed to strike his shoulder, sending a sharp pain through his arm. Blood began to stain his shirt, and the realization hit him hard. This wasn't just a test of strength. It was a test of everything: his survival instincts, his resolve, and his ability to endure. The Avarics didn't care if he was human. They cared about one thing: whether or not he could prove himself worthy of their respect. Jason's breath came in ragged gasps as he fought to stay on his feet. His body was sore, his mind racing. Every move he made seemed to put him in a more dangerous position, and it was clear that the Avarics weren't about to show mercy. They weren't just testing his physical strength. They were testing his will to survive, to stand his ground. Then, as if sensing his struggle, Kilara raised her hand again, signaling a halt. The warriors stepped back, but Jason could feel their eyes still on him. He hadn't won, not yet, but he had survived long enough to show that he wasn't an easy target. He was a human, but he wasn't going to give up without a fight. Impressive, Kilara said, her voice calm yet filled with respect. You're not like the others. Jason didn't know whether that was a compliment or a challenge. Either way, he had passed the first test. But he knew that the real test was just beginning. The warriors backed off, and Jason, still panting, dropped to his knees. His body ached, and the pain in his shoulder was unbearable. But he wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. He had made it through the first round, and he would make it through the next. He wasn't going to give up, no matter how many tests the Avarics threw at him. As the Avarics regrouped, Jason looked up at Kilara, who nodded slightly. He could see the respect in her eyes now, but there was also something else, something that made him realize this was just the beginning of a much larger battle. He had no idea what the future held for him with the Avarics, but one thing was clear: he was in deeper than he had ever expected. This wasn't just about being carried by alien women. It was about survival, and the stakes were higher than he could have ever imagined. Ask ChatGPT. Jason sat on the cold stone floor of the arena, his body aching with every movement. His shoulder throbbed where the blade had struck, and his chest felt tight as he fought to catch his breath. The Avarix warriors stood around him, watching with intense scrutiny. The respect they had shown him moments before was still there, but Jason knew it wasn't enough to save him if he failed their tests again. Kilara stepped forward, her gaze never leaving him. The air around her seemed to hum with power. Her presence alone commanded respect, and the other warriors instinctively stepped aside to give her space. She was different from the others, stronger, faster, more experienced. She wasn't just a warrior. She was the leader. "You've done well," she said, her voice steady and cold. But this was just the beginning. The Avarix don't respect weakness. If you want to survive here, you need to prove you're not like the others. You need to show us your worth. Jason's heart raced as he heard her words. He wasn't sure what she meant, but he understood one thing. He wasn't done yet. Kilara signaled to the other warriors, and they began to move, preparing for something more dangerous. Jason had survived the first trial, but he could sense that the next test would push him even further. He didn't know what they had planned, but he knew one thing. There was no turning back now. "You've earned the right to face the trial of the Avarix," Kilara continued, her voice filling the arena. "It is a battle not just of strength, but of spirit. You will face a trial that will break you if you are weak. Stand tall, human, and show us your strength." Jason's legs felt weak beneath him as he stood. His body was battered, but his mind was sharp. He had no choice but to fight. The Avarix weren't going to let him leave unless he proved himself. He wasn't just fighting for survival now, he was fighting for his place in their world. A loud clang echoed through the arena as the ground shifted beneath him. Jason looked up, his eyes widening in disbelief. The ground was parting, and from beneath it rose a massive stone figure, tall and intimidating. It was an ancient Avarix war machine, a relic from their past. The metallic beast's eyes glowed with an eerie blue light, and its movements were slow but powerful. "This is your final test," Kilara said, her voice carrying a note of finality. "Defeat the war machine, and you will earn our respect. Fail, and you will be crushed beneath its might." Jason's mind raced. This wasn't just a fight against one warrior. It was a battle against a machine that had been built to destroy. He had no weapons, no armor, only his wits and his determination. As the war machine took its first slow, deliberate step towards him, Jason knew that this was his moment. He couldn't afford to fail. The ground trembled with each step of the war machine. Its massive fists clenched as it advanced, its glowing eyes narrowing in on Jason. The air grew colder, and the atmosphere grew thick with tension. Jason knew he had to make his move quickly. If he didn't, he would be reduced to nothing more than a pile of dust. He sprinted to the side, narrowly dodging the war machine's massive arm as it swung down with terrifying force. The ground cracked where its fist hit, sending a shockwave through the arena. Jason's heart raced, but he kept moving, staying just out of reach. Every instinct told him to run, but he couldn't. Not now, as the machine reared back for another strike. Jason spotted a weakness, an exposed panel on its back. He knew that if he could reach it, he might have a chance to disable the machine. The Avarix had built this thing for power, not for speed, and it was slow to react. He dashed towards the machine, weaving in and out of its massive fists. The war machine swung again, but this time, Jason ducked, using its momentum to slip behind it. He reached for the exposed panel and began to pry it open, his fingers slipping on the cold metal. He could hear the machine's whirring gears inside, and he knew that he was running out of time. The machine let out a mechanical growl, its eyes flashing red as it realized what Jason was doing. It turned with sudden speed, but Jason was ready. He used his remaining strength to pry open the panel just enough to access the machine's core. With a grunt of effort, he slammed his hand inside, finding the power source. He didn't know exactly what he was doing, but he was determined to shut it down. There was a sudden loud crack, and the war machine froze. The lights in its eyes dimmed, and its massive body collapsed to the ground lifeless. Jason stood over it, panting and covered in sweat, his heart still racing. He had done it. He had defeated the Avariks war machine. Kalara stepped forward, her eyes narrowed in approval. She didn't speak at first, but the look she gave him said everything. Jason had proven himself. He had passed the trial. But what came next he wasn't sure. The real test was still ahead, and Kyler's expression made it clear that this was only the beginning. Jason felt a sense of accomplishment wash over him, but he knew better than to celebrate too soon. The Avariks didn't hand out respect easily, and there was still a long way to go before he could truly claim his place among them. Jason stood amidst the wreckage of the war machine, his breath still coming in heavy gasps. His entire body ached, and the adrenaline was slowly wearing off, leaving behind a deep fatigue. His shoulder burned with pain, but he didn't have time to think about it. He had passed the test, but the Avariks were far from satisfied. He could see it in their eyes, in the way they circled him, sizing him up. Kalara, standing at the forefront of the warriors, watched him closely. Her expression remained unreadable, but there was something in her gaze that made Jason uneasy. It was respect, yes, but also something else, something darker. He had proven his strength, but had he truly earned the right to stand among them? The silence in the arena was deafening as the warriors waited for Kylara's next move. Jason took a deep breath, wiping the sweat from his brow. He had survived 3 trials, each more grueling than the last, but he knew the Avariks well enough to understand that this wasn't the end. They would never let him join their ranks so easily. There was always a price to pay, and Jason was about to find out exactly what that price was. Kalara stepped forward, her voice breaking the silence. "You've fought well, human," she said, her tone both cold and respectful. "But the Avariks do not take kindly to those who challenge their customs. You've proven your strength, but now you must prove your loyalty. If you wish to remain among us, you will pay the price." Jason's heart skipped a beat. He had known this was coming, but he hadn't expected it to be so direct. His mind raced as he tried to anticipate what they would ask of him. He had no choice but to comply. This was the way of the Avariks. "Your loyalty will be tested," Kalara continued, her eyes never leaving his. "You will serve us, prove your worth, and make the ultimate sacrifice. Only then will you truly be one of us." Jason swallowed hard. "What do you mean by ultimate sacrifice?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kylara's lips curled into a slight smile, though there was no warmth in it. "You will fight for us," she said, her voice steady. "You will give up your freedom, your humanity. You will fight in the name of the Avariks, and you will never return to your home. This is the price you must pay for your honor among us." Jason's world seemed to stop for a moment. He had come to this planet seeking a way to make his name known, to earn respect among the galaxy's most powerful beings. But now, it seemed that respect came at a far greater cost than he could have ever imagined. The Avariks weren't just testing his strength, they were asking for his very soul. To join them, he had to become one of them in every way possible. His freedom, his identity, everything he had ever known would be gone. In return, he would gain the honor of being a warrior, a member of their powerful race. But at what price? Jason felt a cold wave wash over him as he realized the gravity of the situation. "You're asking me to become something I'm not," Jason said, his voice shaking with the weight of his words. "You want me to throw away everything I've ever known, my life, my freedom, Kylara nodded, her expression unchanged. The Avrix never asked for anything less. You must prove your loyalty, and that requires sacrifice. If you are unwilling to give all, you will be nothing to us. Your time here will end, and you will leave empty-handed. Jason felt trapped, caught between two choices. He had already given so much: his strength, his will, his dignity. But was it enough? Was he willing to sacrifice everything for the honor that the Avrix offered him? He glanced at the other warriors standing in the shadows. Their faces unreadable. There was no turning back. If he refused, the Avrix would show him no mercy. Kylara's eyes softened slightly, and for a brief moment, Jason thought he saw a flicker of something more human in her gaze. You are a strong warrior, human, she said. But strength alone does not make you one of us. You must choose surrender everything, or walk away from this world forever. Jason's mind raced. He thought of his home, his life back on Earth, the people he had left behind. But he also thought of the power, the strength, and the respect he had earned in this alien world. The Avrix were unlike any race he had ever encountered. If he left, he would be nothing. But if he stayed, he would become something more, something beyond human. He looked up at Kylara, meeting her gaze. I choose to stay, he said, his voice firm. I choose to become one of you. I will sacrifice everything for this honor. A small smile tugged at the corner of Kylara's lips, and she nodded. Then you are ready. You will serve the Avrix, and you will never look back. The path you walk from here on out is one of blood and battle. There's no turning back now, human. Jason stood tall, the weight of his decision settling in his chest. He had chosen to become one of the Avrix, and there was no going back. But even as the words left his mouth, he felt a deep sense of foreboding. The road ahead would be long, and the price he would pay might be more than he could ever imagine. Jason stood at the center of the arena, surrounded by the Avrix warriors. The weight of his decision pressed down on him, and the silence around him seemed to amplify the thundering of his heart. The sacrifice was about to begin. He had chosen to stay, to become one of them, but the reality of that choice was far more daunting than he had ever anticipated. Kylara's gaze remained steady, unwavering. She had given him a moment to think, but now that time was over. Jason had chosen his path, and there was no going back. The other Avrix warriors circled him, their eyes cold and calculating. They weren't just watching him, they were waiting for him to prove his worth, to prove that he could live up to the price of honor he had agreed to pay. You have made your choice, human, Kylara said, her voice low and commanding. Now you will face your final test. You will fight to earn your place among us. But this time, it will not be a test of your strength alone. It will be a test of your spirit, your will to endure. Jason swallowed hard, his breath shallow. He had expected more trials, but this was different. It wasn't about survival anymore. It was about giving up everything he was, everything he had been for. The honor of becoming something new. The Avrix had taken his humanity, but would he be able to hold on to his soul? Kylara raised her hand, signaling the start of the final test. The arena rumbled beneath him, and from the shadows emerged a figure, a massive, hulking creature with 4 arms and glowing red eyes. It was an Avrix war beast, a creature bred for combat and destruction. It was as much a symbol of their power as the Avrix themselves, and Jason was about to face it. Defeat this beast, and you will have proven yourself worthy, Kylara declared. Fail, and your place among us will be forfeit. Jason's mind raced. The war beast was twice his size, its muscles rippling under its dark, scaled skin. It snarled at him, showing rows of sharp teeth. The Avrix warriors watched silently, their expressions unreadable. There was no room for hesitation. If Jason faltered now, if he failed, the consequences would be dire. He would lose everything he had fought for, and the Avrix would show him no mercy. The war beast lunged forward, its massive claws aimed straight for Jason's chest. He barely had time to react, but his reflexes kicked in. He sidestepped, narrowly avoiding the swipe, and as the beast crashed into the ground, he saw his opening. He grabbed a nearby spear, his hand trembling as he gripped the cold metal. The creature roared in anger, turning quickly to face him. Jason charged at it, thrusting the spear toward its chest. The beast batted it aside with ease, but Jason didn't stop. He kept moving, dodging and weaving as the creature's claws slashed through the air. The Aviriks were watching, waiting for him to make a mistake, to show weakness. They wanted to see if he could endure the pain, the fear, the raw terror of facing a creature far stronger than him. For a moment, Jason felt his resolve waver. The pain in his shoulder flared again, and he stumbled. The beast took advantage of his moment of weakness, slamming its claw into his side. Jason fell to the ground, gasping for breath. His vision blurred, and he felt the weight of everything he had chosen crashing down on him. This was the final test, and he was failing. But then, something inside him snapped. He couldn't give up. Not now. Not after everything he had gone through. He had made his choice, and he had to see it through. He wasn't just fighting for his life anymore. He was fighting for his place among the Aviriks, for the honor they had promised him. With renewed strength, Jason forced himself to his feet. The war beast lunged again, but this time Jason was ready. He ducked beneath its claws and used the momentum of its strike to leap onto its back. The creature howled in pain, thrashing beneath him, but Jason held on. With one final effort, he drove the spear deep into the war beast's throat. It let out a deafening roar before collapsing, its body crumpling to the ground in a heap. The arena fell silent. Jason stood over the beast, his chest heaving, blood dripping from his wounds. He had done it. He had defeated the war beast, proving his strength, his resolve, and his will to survive. Kalara stepped forward, her expression unreadable. She said nothing for a long moment, and Jason felt the weight of her gaze on him. Finally, she spoke. "You have proven yourself human," she said. "You are worthy of the honor of the Aviriks. You will join us, and you will fight by our side. But remember this is not just a gift. It is a responsibility. You have given up your humanity, and in return, you will become one of us." Jason nodded, his body aching, but his heart swelling with pride. He had made the ultimate sacrifice, and it had paid off. He had earned his place among the Aviriks, and there was no turning back now. He had given everything for this moment, and he was ready to embrace the future that awaited him. As Kalara extended her hand, Jason took it, knowing that he had truly become one of them. The price of honor had been steep, but it was a price he had been willing to pay. And in the end, it had made him stronger, more than human, more than he had ever been before.